The sky was quiet just seconds before the explosion. It was the kind of stillness that settles like a warning, the pause between lightning and thunder, the breath held before a scream. Reza had felt it before, and each time it ended the same way. A deafening roar, the ground rising to meet him, then nothing. He didn't remember the blast, only the moment after. When he opened his eyes, there was dust in the air. Everything smelled like earth and smoke. His ears rang with the high-pitched wail that drowned out all other sound. The world around him had gone quiet, not because it was silent, but because his body could no longer process noise. Reza blinked, trying to clear the grit from his lashes. Pain throbbed in his left leg. He tried to move and gasped. Blood soaked through his uniform, warm and sticky against the cold fabric. He bit down on his lip, tasting iron. Above him, the sky was a faded yellow-gray, smeared with ash. No trees, no buildings. Just the remains of a no-man's land, somewhere between Iran's final outpost and Iksarin's forward trench. He'd gotten turned around during the retreat. One wrong step, and now here he was alone. Or so he thought. Then he heard it, a sound barely audible beneath the ringing, a low groan. He turned his head toward it, and that's when he saw him. Just a few meters away, slumped beside a shattered supply crate, was a man in Iksarin uniform. Camouflage of a different pattern, a different war cry stitched onto his arm. His face was twisted in pain, his hand clutching at his shoulder, where blood poured freely. Reza's heart lurched. Training took over. Enemy. He reached slowly for his sidearm, only to find his holster empty. The blast must have taken it. He cursed under his breath, then froze again. The man was looking at him. Their eyes locked, two soldiers, from opposing sides, both broken, both bleeding. For a long moment, neither moved. Reza expected a shout, a reach for a weapon, anything. But instead, the Iksarin soldier, who couldn't have been more than 20, simply exhaled and lowered his head to the dirt. He made no effort to crawl, no attempt to threaten. He was barely conscious. Reza looked away. The ringing in his ears softened just enough for the sounds of distant gunfire to return, faint and irregular. The front line had moved on. They were alone in the wake of destruction. He shifted slightly, biting back another cry of pain. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a field bandage. The roll was dusty, but intact. He hesitated, looked again at the Iksarin soldier, whose hand now hung limply beside him. No one would know. No one would see. But Reza remembered something his grandfather, a medic in an older war, once told him. On the battlefield, you are a soldier, but in the space between bullets, you must be a man. Without a word, Reza tossed the bandage toward the other man. It landed with a soft thud beside his boot. The Iksarin soldier flinched, eyes fluttering open. He looked down at the bandage, then back at Reza. There was confusion in his gaze, then recognition, not of the man, but of the gesture. Slowly, painfully, he reached for it. His fingers trembled. Reza watched him fumble to wrap it around his bleeding shoulder. The knot was clumsy, but it held. Then, unexpectedly, the soldier spoke. Shukran. Reza didn't answer. He just stared at the sky. The silence that followed was different now. Not empty, but heavy with unspoken things. Time passed. The sun shifted. Reza pulled himself closer to a half-buried piece of metal and propped himself against it, breathing hard. Every move was fire through his leg. He didn't know how long he had before infection set in, or before someone, anyone, found them. Reza, he muttered, almost to himself. The other soldier turned his head slightly. Amin, he said hoarsely. They hadn't asked, but names found their way between them, as if needing to exist beyond the uniforms they wore. Enemies by allegiance, strangers by geography, but human now, beneath the sky that didn't care who they fought for. A light wind stirred dust across the field. Amin coughed, blood on his lips. You think they'll come for us?" Reza didn't answer. He wasn't sure who they meant anymore. His unit had fallen back 2 days ago. He'd volunteered to cover the retreat. And now, all he could do was sit and breathe and watch the man he was supposed to hate bleed beside him. "They trained us to win," Amin murmured, "but not to lose like this." Reza looked at him for the first time, really looked. The boy was younger than his own brother. His skin was tanned, but pale now with pain. His left boot was missing, probably blown off. His leg twisted at a strange angle. Reza sighed and reached into his pocket again. A ration bar, half crushed. He broke it in two and tossed a piece toward Amin. Amin caught it, barely. They ate in silence. Above them, the sun dipped behind the clouds, painting the ruined landscape in amber and shadow. Night would come soon, and with it, cold. Reza looked around. There were no blankets, no firewood, just debris, scraps, and a twisted metal helmet. He dragged himself toward the center of the clearing, gritting his teeth through the pain. "We can't survive separately," he said. "Come here. Use this as a windblock." Amin didn't move at first. Then, groaning, he pulled himself inch by inch toward Reza, collapsing just a foot away. They leaned back against the same makeshift wall, breathing heavily. "Don't try anything," Reza said softly. "Not as a threat, but a habit." Amin gave a weak laugh. "Not in the mood to stab you today." The wind picked up, rustling what was left of the grass. They sat there, 2 soldiers from 2 sides, wounded and waiting, surrounded by silence and smoke. And for the first time, in the space between what had been and what might come, neither of them felt like enemies anymore. The wind pressed harder through the dead grass that evening, whispering between broken branches and shell casings. The battlefield, once loud with shouts and gunfire, had quieted into a strange peace. A peace not born of victory, but of exhaustion. Reza sat with his back against a piece of torn metal, the last of his strength fading. His leg burned with each breath. The bleeding slowed, but not stopped. He had done what he could, torn his undershirt for a makeshift wrap, tied it tightly above the wound. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Amin lay not far, eyes half closed, lips pale. He had used Reza's bandage to slow the bleeding from his shoulder, but his face had grown more hollow by the hour. Reza could hear the uneven rhythm of his breathing. He didn't know if the boy would last the night. They hadn't spoken much since the sun dipped behind the hills. Words seemed too heavy now, like stones tied to their ribs, but the silence wasn't hostile. It felt more like waiting, waiting for morning, waiting for rescue, waiting for anything. Reza reached into his jacket, feeling for the last thing he had left, a photo. It was worn, folded at the corners. A woman, smiling in a way that made her eyes crinkle. His sister, the only family he had left. He looked at her face for a long moment, then folded it gently and tucked it back against his chest. He wasn't ready to die, but he wasn't afraid anymore. Not like before. A small sound broke the air, Amin groaning, trying to sit up. Reza looked over. "Don't," he said, voice hoarse. Amin gave a weak laugh. "Just checking if I still have a spine." Reza scoffed. "Looks like you do, though it's probably broken." They shared the faintest smile. "Why'd you give me the bandage?" Amin asked after a moment, his voice barely more than a breath. Reza didn't answer right away. He glanced up at the sky, stars beginning to blink into view. "Because you were bleeding," he said finally. "That's not usually enough," Amin said. "We're supposed to hate each other." Reza exhaled through his nose. "Hate takes energy. I didn't have any left." Amin let out another tired chuckle, but then he winced. His shoulder throbbed, the bandage wet with blood again. "If I die out here," he said, "will they at least bury me?" "Who's they, anyone?" Reza was quiet. A gust of wind blew past them. Colder now. The warmth of the day had long vanished. and the ground was hard beneath their battered bodies. Reza shifted, then reached for something beside him, a discarded tarp half buried in dirt. He dragged it slowly, painfully, until he could spread it across them both. It was thin, torn in places, but it offered some shelter from the night air. Amin looked over, confused. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Reza said. "You bleed like I do. You shake from the cold like I do." Amin blinked. His face twisted for a second, as if fighting back something softer than pain. "I used to believe we were monsters," he said, "that the other side was just a collection of evil faces behind guns. And then I saw your hand shaking while you opened the bandage." Reza didn't look at him. "Monsters don't shake, no," Amin agreed. "They don't." Silence stretched between them again. But this time, it felt warm. Reza leaned his head back. "Where are you from?" "A village near Al-Kamar," Amin answered. "Small, quiet. We used to raise goats and press olives. My father made oil so pure, he called it light in a bottle." Reza smiled faintly. "My family had an orchard, pomegranates. My sister and I used to sneak out at night and eat them under the stars. Our hands would stain red, and we'd pretend we were wounded warriors." Amin chuckled, then winced again. "Guess life has a sense of humor." They lay there, side by side under the torn tarp, two boys from two different homes, now joined in the middle of a war neither had chosen. "I had a brother," Amin said quietly. "Younger, smarter. He died last year. Airstrike." Reza didn't know what to say, so he said the only true thing he could. "I'm sorry. Me too." The stars brightened above them. A shooting star arced silently across the sky, disappearing before either could say a word. Reza's eyes grew heavier. "We should take turns sleeping. If help comes." "If," Amin repeated. "You sleep first." Reza said. "No. You go. You're worse off." Reza sighed. "You talk too much for a dying man." Amin smiled faintly. "That's what my mother used to say." Reza closed his eyes for a moment, letting the quiet wrap around him like the tarp. But he didn't sleep. Not really. His mind wandered, drifting between memories and pain, between hunger and warmth. And then, after what might have been an hour, he felt something. A hand. Amin's hand, reaching slowly, awkwardly, in the dark. Reza opened his eyes. "I'm not asking for anything," Amin said. I don't want to die alone." Reza stared at the hand for a moment. Then he reached out and took it. Two soldiers, two enemies, fingers entwined beneath the stars. The morning crept in quietly, as if afraid to disturb what the night had left behind. The sky was pale gold, streaked with soft gray clouds, and the first light stretched gently across the scarred landscape. Smoke still lingered far off on the horizon, but here, among the torn earth and rusting debris, there was a kind of stillness, a fragile truce between chaos and peace. Reza blinked awake to find his hand still wrapped around Amin's. The grip had loosened in sleep, but neither had let go completely. He gently pulled away, stretching his fingers. His body ached with every movement, but his mind felt clearer. The pain hadn't gone, it never did, but something inside him had shifted. The fear that had clenched his chest yesterday felt lighter. Amin stirred beside him, wincing as he moved. His face was pale, but his eyes opened with recognition, not confusion. "We're still here," he murmured. "Unfortunately," Reza replied with a dry smile. They shared a brief glance, not quite laughter, but close. Survival had become a kind of quiet defiance. Reza looked around. The tarp had slipped during the night, exposing them to the cool air. Dew glistened on the ground, like tiny crystals. They needed better shelter. The cold had already deepened their wounds. Another night like that, and they might not wake up at all. "I saw something yesterday," Amin said slowly, pushing himself up with effort. When we crawled out of the blast, there was a tree, not far. That way. He pointed weakly toward the west, where the land rose slightly into a series of low hills. A tree, Reza asked, skeptical. An olive tree, Amin said. I know how they grow. Wide roots, strong bark. If we can reach it, we might find shade, shelter, maybe even water beneath. Reza hesitated. His leg throbbed at the thought of moving. But the idea of staying here, waiting for a rescue that might never come, was worse. How far, he asked. Amin looked at the sun. Maybe an hour if we crawl. Reza nodded. Then we crawl. It was slow, excruciatingly slow. They took turns leading, dragging their bodies over dry grass, loose rocks, and twisted metal fragments. Each movement was measured in breaths. Each pause was a negotiation between pain and willpower. Twice, Reza thought he might pass out. Once, Amin did. But finally, after what felt like eternity, they saw it. A single olive tree stood in the distance, half buried in rubble, but alive. Its thick trunk curled with age, its branches stretched outward like arms still reaching for the sky. Some of the leaves were brown, but others shimmered green in the sunlight. A miracle in the middle of war. They collapsed beneath its branches, too tired to speak. For a long time, they simply lay there, breathing, letting the shadow of the tree cover their bodies like a blessing. Later, Reza sat up and leaned against the bark. It was rough beneath his back, but it held him. He looked at Amin, who was staring at the sky through the leaves. My father planted trees, Amin said, almost dreamily. He said olives were the only ones that could remember peace. They take years before they bear fruit. You can't rush them. You have to trust they'll grow. Reza nodded. My grandfather used to say something similar. The tree that feeds you now grew from the patience of someone else. They fell into silence again. This time, it wasn't heavy. It was full of something quiet and sacred. From his pocket, Amin pulled a tiny silver pendant. It was shaped like a dove, worn smooth with time. My brother gave me this, he said, before he joined the army. Said I should carry peace with me, even when the world didn't. Reza studied it for a moment. Does it help? Amin shrugged. Some days. Reza looked down at the soil near the base of the tree. Small roots poked through, winding around rocks and reaching deep. He dug gently with his fingers until he hit coolness, damp earth. Not water, but close. Close enough to know this tree had survived more than one storm. There's life here, he said softly. Amin nodded, even in the middle of death. They shared a ration bar Reza had kept tucked in his sock. It was stale, but it was food. The act of breaking and sharing it felt almost ceremonial. Tell me something good, Reza said after a while. Not about war, just anything. Amin thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. There was a girl in my village, Liana. She used to sing to the goats, thought it made them give more milk. I laughed at her once, and she didn't talk to me for a week. Then one day, she left a flower on my doorstep. No note, just a flower. Reza chuckled. Did you ever thank her I married her? Amin said. The laughter faded. Reza didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. I used to sing too, Reza said after a moment. My sister and I. We made up songs while picking pomegranates. Terrible rhymes. But they made us laugh. Amin turned his head slightly. You still remember the words? Reza thought, then began to hum. It was rough, quiet, and full of dust, but it was real. Amin listened, then joined in with a tune of his own, something softer, from his land. The melodies didn't match, not exactly, but somehow they blended. Two songs from two countries, under one tree. As the sun sank lower in the sky, painting their small world in gold and shadow, Reza looked at the branches above. If we get out of this, he said, I want to plant a tree. Amin smiled. Me too. They didn't say anything else that evening. They just sat beneath the olive tree, shoulder to shoulder, not as soldiers, but as survivors. The night came quickly beneath the olive tree. As the last light faded from the sky, the air turned colder than either of them expected. The warmth of shared memories, of pomegranate songs and goat-sung lullabies, gave way to the shivering truth their bodies were still broken, and their time was running thin. Reza's leg was hot to the touch. Too hot. Amin noticed it first, how Reza shifted constantly, murmured incoherent words under his breath, and sweated, even as the cold pressed in around them. "Reza," he whispered. No response. He leaned closer. Reza's eyes were half closed, his chest rising and falling too fast, too shallow. His forehead gleamed with sweat. Fever. Amin's own body was screaming with pain. His shoulder had started to throb again, and his stomach felt like it was slowly eating itself. But none of that mattered now. He reached over, placed his hand gently on Reza's cheek. Burning. Amin sat back, heart racing. He didn't have medicine. He barely had anything. Just a broken canteen with 2 gulps of water left. He stared at it, then at Reza, then back at the sky. The stars above twinkled, as if watching. And then he felt it. A drop, then another. Within seconds, the clouds opened above them, and the rain began to fall. Not a storm, not a downpour, just a quiet, steady rain, soft as prayer. Amin grabbed the canteen and tilted it toward the sky, catching what he could. He took Reza's scarf still tied around his own waist and held it out to soak. His one good arm worked as fast as it could, trembling with effort, soaking, wringing, soaking again. He pressed the damp fabric to Reza's forehead, again and again, wiping the sweat, trying to draw out the heat. "Come on, my friend," he whispered. "You didn't carry me to a tree just to die beneath it." Reza mumbled something. Amin leaned closer. "Zara," he breathed. "Zara. I'm sorry." A name. A regret. Amin closed his eyes for a moment. "She's waiting," he said. "So don't make her wait forever." The night passed slowly. Amin didn't sleep. He barely even blinked. He kept soaking the scarf, wiping Reza's face, whispering things that didn't always make sense, words of comfort, fragments of stories, sometimes just soft nonsense to fill the silence. By dawn, the fever broke. Reza stirred, blinking slowly. His skin still looked pale, but the wildness in his eyes had faded. His breath came easier now, steadier. "You look terrible," he rasped. Amin let out a tired laugh, almost collapsing beside him. "Good morning to you too." They lay there, side by side, breathing in the scent of wet earth and olive leaves. "You stayed up all night?" Reza asked. "Didn't trust the rain to do all the work," Amin replied. "Besides, you were talking to someone named Zara." Reza turned his head slowly. "My sister. She died 5 years ago." "I never said goodbye." Amin didn't ask how. The war had stolen so many people in so many ways. Bombs didn't care about last words. "I'm sure she forgives you," Amin said quietly. Reza looked at him for a long time. Then, in a voice almost too soft to hear, he whispered, "Thank you." The rain had stopped, but the leaves still dripped gently, forming tiny rhythms against the metal debris and soaked cloth. Amin's shoulder had reopened. Blood soaked the side of his shirt, turning the green fabric a deep brownish red. Reza noticed. "Your turn," he said, sitting up with a grimace. "Let me look. You can barely stay upright. Still better than you trying to bandage with one arm." Amin smiled faintly, but didn't argue. Reza tore a piece from the tarp, wrapped it tightly, and tied it using his belt. It wasn't pretty, but it held. They rested again. It was strange, this rhythm of pain. Pause, tenderness, silence. Like the slow unwinding of something once knotted tight. Around midday, they heard the first sound of movement, far off, A faint motor, a rumble in the earth. They froze. Amin sat up straighter, straining to listen. Vehicle, not ours. Reza nodded. Iranian patrol could be Iksaran. Amin said, could be scavengers. Neither of them spoke for a long time. They both knew what it meant. If it was a patrol from Reza's side, Amin would be taken. As a prisoner, maybe worse. If it was Amin's, Reza would face the same. Or perhaps neither of them would make it back at all. What do we do? Amin asked. Reza stared at the olive tree above them, its leaves dancing gently in the breeze. I don't know, he admitted. But I know this whatever happens. I want them to see this. He held up the scarf, still damp, stained with blood and rainwater. Amin understood. Two enemies, he said, sheltering each other under a tree. Reza nodded. Maybe if they see that, they'll stop long enough to remember who we are. They sat side by side, waiting. Not with fear, but with something like peace. For whatever would come next. The engines grew louder, rolling across the ruined plain like thunder without lightning. Beneath the olive tree, Reza and Amin listened, their backs against the trunk, their wounds wrapped in each other's rags. Dust rose on the eastern ridge, metal glinted. A convoy was coming, but from which flag neither man could tell. Fear pricked them both, yet neither moved apart. Amin's fingers tightened on the shared scarf. Reza covered them with his own. They had already promised, in fever and rain, that they would face the next storm together. Reza broke the silence. If it is my unit, he whispered, I will swear you saved me. Amin managed a tired smile. And if it is mine, I will say the same. They knew mercy might be judged betrayal, but the decision was made. Searching the ground, Reza found a torn canvas panel, once part of a tent wall. With one good arm and one aching leg, they hoisted it into the branches. It was not a flag, only a dull square of surrender that named no country and asked for nothing but help. The engines neared. Voices surfaced Farsi commands, ordering a casualty sweep. Medics, not infantry. Relief flashed across Reza's face, shadowed by dread for Amin. Your people, Amin said. For now. Reza answered, but yours may not be far behind. Wanting proof, the moment mattered. Reza pressed Zara's photograph into Amin's palm. If we're split, keep her safe. Amin slipped off the silver dove pendant and set it over Reza's heart. Hang this in the pomegranate tree you will plant. Their hands met. Oath without document. The first vehicle, an Iranian field ambulance, rolled into view. Two medics jumped down, rifles slung. Their eyes widened at the sight an enemy soldier propped against one of their own, both half dead yet alive together. One medic raised a megaphone. Identify yourselves. Reza could not stand. He lifted both hands. Lieutenant Reza Farhadi, 9th Infantry. Wounded. Enemy combatant wounded as well. Request evacuation for both. Hesitation rippled through the patrol. Protocol said separate. Interrogate. The ragged canvas and clasped hands argued another law, older than war. Before a decision formed, new engines rumbled from the western ridge. 3 Iksaran trucks appeared, dust banners snapping behind. Iranian soldiers shouldered rifles. Iksaran troops answered. Steel pointed at steel across 50 meters of blasted ground. Amin pulled himself upright, dragged Reza with him, and limped into the open. Orders to lie down barked from both sides. Ignored. The wounded pair raised their entwined hands high. No fire, Reza shouted in Farsi. No fire, Amin echoed in his tongue. For a breath, the battlefield froze. One Iranian lowered his rifle. An Iksaran followed. A medic from each army stepped forward, palms up. Weapons dipped, mistrust hanging like smoke yet thinning in the new air. Reza's knees buckled. Amin's breath rattled. Stretchers slid beneath them, hoisted by mixed hands. Even strapped down, they kept hold of each other until morphine loosened the grip. In the Iranian ambulance, they lay opposite yet connected Reza, fingering the dove pendant, Amin clutching Zara's worn photo. Nurses spoke half in Persian, half in Ixaren, stitching silence with kindness. Through a window, they saw the two convoys merge ambulance first. Ixaren truck behind, rolling as one cautious column toward the neutral field hospital. Pain ebbed and surged. Between pulses, Reza imagined a courtyard where pomegranate blossoms glowed red against white walls. Amin pictured olive branches bending under new fruit. Both believed, however faintly, that the trees were now possible. Beneath all the pain, hope kept a tiny pulse. The joint convoy advanced slowly, wary of landmines and sudden orders. Radios crackled with confused headquarters, asking why vehicles from opposite sides were sharing a road. The Iranian lieutenant answered, "Humanitarian transfer. 2 critical casualties." The Ixaren commander echoed the phrase in her tongue. Neither asked permission, they simply reported. Inside the ambulance, Reza drifted in and out of consciousness. When he woke, he saw Amin watching him. "Still with me?" Reza asked. "Still here." Amin rasped. Reza smiled through cracked lips. "Good. I've never planted a tree alone." Amin closed his eyes, tears mixing with dust. "Nor have I." They spoke in fragments of favorite soups, of desert moons, of how olive wood smells when burned at night. Each confession felt like a stitch drawing their worlds together. A nurse who overheard whispered, "Talk more. It keeps the brain from slipping away." So they did. When fatigue silenced them, Reza watched the nurse adjust Amin's drip. "He saved me," Reza murmured. She paused and nodded. "And you saved him. That matters." She didn't say to whom. It simply mattered. At a crossroads, a shell had shattered. Arguments erupted over routes. But the medics chose a longer path that kept the two friends beside each other. In war's language, that detour was a declaration the truce around two soldiers would hold for as many kilometers as wheels could turn. Late afternoon sun slanted across bandages. Dusk revealed white tents ringed by blue helmets. Paperwork blossomed. Surgeons cut away shrapnel. Anesthesia stole hours they would never recall. They awoke in adjacent beds, curtain deliberately left open. Fingers brushed across the gap, sealing the promise made under the olive tree. Days crawled, stitches itched, fevers broke, and laughter returned in gentle pulses. They traded sayings, compared breads, and argued whose tea was sweeter until nurses hushed them. One morning, the Iranian lieutenant and the Ixaren commander arrived together with a prisoner exchange form. When both men could walk, each would return home no trial, no chains. It was only a month, but it felt like forever opening. That night, a nurse delivered 2 clay pots, one holding an olive seedling, the other a pomegranate shoot. "Plant them," she said, "where the soil is clean." Tears glimmered. "In the dim hour before dawn," Reza whispered, "when the trees are tall, we will meet beneath their shade." Amin, half asleep, replied, "And our children will know each other's songs." They drifted into dreams where no border cut through orchards and groves. Far away, the blank canvas still fluttered over the lonely olive tree, telling passing winds about 2 soldiers who chose humanity. For one trembling heartbeat, the war forgot itself, and that heartbeat was enough to keep them alive for whatever peace might follow. Years passed. The war that had scorched the soil between Iran and Ixaren finally ground to an uneasy halt, not with a grand surrender or a hero's parade, but with silence. A silence too wide, too long, as if even history itself was ashamed to speak of what had been lost. Reza walked slowly now, his left leg stiff, dragging slightly with each step. He carried a cane, not because he needed it anymore, but because he liked how it reminded him to walk slower, to notice things. A child's laughter, the rustle of olive leaves, the soft sigh of wind against earth. Small things that had once been taken by noise and fire. In his right hand, he carried something else, a small box wrapped in cloth, its corners worn, its weight light but precious. He held it close as he reached the crest of a sunlit hill. Ahead of him, a figure stood beneath a canopy of leaves. The olive tree had grown, its branches now stretched wide, heavy with green fruit. Shadows danced beneath it, cool and familiar. And there, waiting beside the tree, stood Amin, his shoulder still slightly crooked, his smile still lopsided and quiet. They hadn't seen each other in person since the war ended. Letters had come first handwritten, smuggled between embassies, then official recognition through a peace program. A few video calls. The plans for this meeting had taken years. But now, here they were. Reza reached the tree and let out a soft laugh. "It's taller than I imagined." Amin smiled. "You said we'd meet under its shade. I made sure it was worth the wait." They embraced, gently, carefully. Two men who once clung to life under fire, now standing together in sunlight. Reza sat first, lowering himself with a slow breath. Amin followed. For a long time, they said nothing. Just listened to the breeze, to the soft thudding of ripe olives dropping to the grass. Reza unwrapped the box and revealed a small glass jar. Inside, deep red pomegranate seeds shimmered in the light. "I brought these from the orchard," he said. "It finally bore fruit last year." Amin's eyes lit up. "You kept it alive." "I had to," Reza said. "You gave me the roots?" He offered the jar. Amin took a few seeds, placed them in his mouth, chewed slowly. "Sweet," he said. "Like your songs." Reza chuckled. "They were awful." "You were just too polite to say." They sat in silence again. But it was the kind of silence that wrapped around them like a well-worn blanket, familiar, comforting. Amin pulled something from his satchel. It was a scroll, rolled tightly and bound with a ribbon. "They're holding a ceremony next month," he said. "The tree will be declared a peace witness site. Your name will be on the plaque." Reza raised an eyebrow. "Yours better be first." Amin laughed. "It will be side by side, like us." Reza nodded. "Good." The two men leaned back against the trunk, remembering. Not the blood, or the screaming, or the smoke, but the scarf soaked in rainwater, the faint breath of someone who wouldn't let go, the moment two enemies became something else entirely. "I still have your pendant," Reza said softly. "And I still have Zara's photo," Amin replied. They exchanged items silently, each placing the object gently in the other's hands, like passing relics between monks. A family approached in the distance, tourists or pilgrims. It was hard to tell. A child ran ahead, laughing, circling the base of the olive tree. Reza smiled. "She doesn't know what this place once was." "She shouldn't," Amin said. "Let her know what it became." The father took a picture of the tree. The mother read a small stone marker that had been placed nearby. Here stood two men who chose compassion in the middle of war. They kept it simple, Reza observed. "Sometimes truth doesn't need poetry." Amin replied, "It just needs to be remembered." A breeze passed through the branches, making them sway gently above their heads. Reza closed his eyes, listening. "I dreamt of this place so many times," he said. "In every version. I never knew if you'd be here." "I almost wasn't," Amin admitted. "Life pulled me everywhere but peace. But I kept remembering the promise, and the rain, and the fever, and your terrible jokes." They both laughed, quietly. When the family left, the two men remained. Hours passed like minutes. As the sun dipped low, the shadows stretched longer, and the sky turned amber. Reza pulled out a small spade. "Shall we?" he asked. Amin nodded. Together, they dug a shallow hole a few feet from the olive tree. In it, they placed two things, one pomegranate seed and one olive pit. "No border," Reza whispered. "No flags." Amin added, "Just roots." They covered the hole with soil, patted it down with weathered hands, and poured water from a shared flask. A new tree would grow here. One day, not a witness of war, but a memory of something braver, something gentler. As twilight deepened, Reza leaned his head on the trunk. "If I die before the tree grows," he said, "promise me you'll come see it bloom." Amin nodded, tears in his eyes. "And if I go first, make sure it doesn't grow alone." They stayed like that until the stars began to rise, like they had the night they first reached for each other's hands. Two men, once enemies, now brothers beneath a tree, they helped survive.